Hey there, Sun Devil fans. I'm Ethan Schmidt here reporting for DevilsDigest.com. I'm here with our publisher, Hod Rubino. And Hod, let's review Arizona State's 30-7 victory over Kent State tonight. Hod, 455 yards of offense from ASU, but just 30 points to show for it. And how much of that came from having a true freshman in Jaden Daniels start at QB, along with the true freshman center and Donovan West, both starting for the first time in their collegiate career?
Well, many people said tonight, and I have to agree, that this season is the 150th season of college football, and I doubt that any team throughout the 150 years was in the same predicament as Arizona State was tonight, starting, like you said, both a true freshman at quarterback and a true freshman at center, and really a combination that wasn't working all that often, even throughout preseason practices. And to have this injury to senior Cade Cote, which your heart really goes out to, finally getting a chance to play meaningful minutes at one of the most important positions on the entire offense, and to suffer a broken foot on Sunday and a non-contact injury, which makes it even more frustrating, I'm sure, for him and for the team, was really just a tough situation for Arizona State to start the season with. Rob Likens, defensive coordinator, said that if this happened 2-3 weeks ago, you can definitely better prepare for it. When it happens literally 4 days before your season opener, that's just a whole different set of circumstances. Yeah. Now, I think that under the circumstances, Jaden Daniels actually did pretty well. 15 out of 24 for 2 touchdowns, 284 yards, so really
pretty poised for a true freshman.
Yeah, and really, Ethan, I think that's what we saw all throughout August, so there wasn't really a lot of surprise in that sense. I think it was probably sharper in the first half compared to the second half, but you could probably say that about the entire offense as a whole. I do think that the offensive line as a whole really had issues protecting Jaden Daniels, and that definitely hampered his production, if not the entire offensive production. And I think that Kent State recorded at least 5 sacks, maybe even one or two more than that. And that really just disrupted the rhythm for Arizona State. But look, on the other hand, the big-time playmakers for Arizona State did come out today. Eno Benjamin had 102 yards on 22 carries. Brandon Ayuk, 140 yards receiving on 4 receptions. Had a great touchdown over here.
Yeah, that was an excellent run from Brandon.
And it really looked like a N'Keal Harry touchdown run. And we talked so much in the preseason how much this team is looking for Brandon Ayuk to some way, somehow replace the production of N'Keal Harry. Yeah. That might be mission impossible in some senses, but if you make plays like this, you may have just a little more confidence to the future. So definitely not a great performance for the offense, but when you keep in mind that it is a season opener, like you said, true freshman quarterback, true freshman center, really a lot of first-year players playing on offense. At some point, you just really have to take that concession, if you will, and realize that it's not going to look like a well-oiled machine in week 1. I mean, not to look too much ahead, but how much progress we see from this offense from week 1 to week 2 can really tell us, was this a valuable lesson learned by the coaches and by the players on this side of the ball, or are there maybe going to be some lingering issues that really can hamper the Sun Devils down the road?
Definitely. Well, let's take a look at the defensive side of the ball. The unit held Kent State to only 200 yards of total offense, but it was a MAC opponent for the Sun Devils. So just how do you feel about the defense's performance against a team of that caliber?
Well, when I saw Kent State score that lone touchdown, I knew, oh boy, defensive coordinator Danny Gonzalez is not going to be happy after the game. We talked a few minutes ago, sure enough, that was exactly his sentiment. But I think what also troubled Gonzalez, and I think for good reason, that, you know, we're sitting over here, it's definitely not a cool night in Tempe as you would expect on August 29th. But it seemed like it's in some instances, that the Kent State offense seemed a little fresher than the Arizona State defense, and I thought that's something that caught maybe a lot of people surprised. Definitely something that caught Gonzalez by surprise, and he was not pleased with that. He said that just not being able always to keep up with this up-tempo offense was an issue. Arizona State did recover 2 fumbles, but then again, Kent State fumbled the ball 6 times, so that's probably not a great conversion rate when you look at it that way. So you're right. I mean, you talk about a MAC opponent holding them to 200 yards is really something that should be expected and maybe not something that should be over-celebrated, and you're always worried about that overreaction week one syndrome that happens not only in college football but also the NFL. But I think there is some stuff to clean up on the Arizona State defense for sure. Gonzalez was disappointing of the conditioning of this unit, which honestly is kind of troubling to hear, especially this early in the year. But he felt also very confident that he can clean up. Everything needs to be cleaned up, whether it's conditioning or whether it's just different technique and different alignments that did come back to bite Arizona State to some extent. But needless to say, against much higher caliber of opponents, yes, you'll take 7 points and 200 yards of total offense by the opponent. But when it comes against a team like Kent State, a team that really was only 2-10 last season, it's hard to get all that excited. And again, I thought that the comments by Gonzalez for this defense, looking at times fatigue and not being able to always keep up with a high-tempo offense, that really didn't surprise anybody in the building today. That is somewhat concerning. But if we're comparing more worrisome points between offense and defense, I think definitely they lie more on the offensive side of the ball. So defense, okay performance, but just like the offense, definitely has some things to clean up.
Of course. Well, 30-7 the final here tonight. But now, Hode, looking ahead to next Friday, the Sun Devils have Sacramento State coming to town. And, you know, another game where the Sun Devils might be looking to work out some kinks, especially having a true freshman at QB. And as we talked about, a true freshman at center now. So just what are some things do you think is on this team's to-do list going into next week?
Well, I think on offense, really just reestablishing the chemistry. I think that, you know, the West Daniels quarterback center relationship, if you will, throughout the game was not all that bad. I think West only had one bad snap, and honestly, that was definitely improvement from what we saw early in August from the true freshman. But I think the line as a whole, protecting Daniels, left a lot to be desired. We don't know yet, because Sacramento State is not playing until Saturday, if this defensive line by ASU's opponent next week is going to be more stout or maybe not as good as what we saw tonight. But there's no doubt in my mind that Arizona State really needs to make sure that the pass protection is on a much higher level. I thought for the most part they were able to open some holes for Eno Benjamin in the run game, but only 102 yards rushing. Again, we talk about a caliber of a MAC opponent. You expect really for someone like Eno Benjamin to run wild. And I know he had some kind of injury situation to go to the locker room in the middle of the game. He did come back, but didn't have like a stellar night. And obviously, I know after 2018, we really hold Eno Benjamin to a much higher standard. But those are some of the things that I think I really need to clean up. I think in the passing game, Jaden Daniels, again, operating under duress for good portions of the night, did pretty well with the passing game. So I don't think a lot to clean up over there. On defense, as I mentioned, the fatigue issue is something that's definitely a head scratcher. So that is something that Arizona State is going to have to work much better with the conditioning. They have a little extra time before that game compared to Sacramento State. And I don't know, maybe they hope that heat's going to affect Sacramento State more than it affected Kent State, because like I said, Kent State in the second half, an issue that we talked about, maybe them tiring, playing in 90-some degree weather late in the third and the fourth quarter would hurt them. Mm-hmm. Looks like in some ironic way really hurt Arizona State maybe a little more. So I think in that sense that's something Arizona State defense is going to have to clean up. There were a lot of first-year players that played in the Arizona State defense, and I'm not saying that as an excuse, but I think it's also going to be an explanation why that side of the ball wasn't really clicking on all cylinders, even though there are a lot of returning players. But the Arizona State coaches were not shy at all, playing a lot of young players. Now, I think some players like Willie Hartz and Kiwan Markham, both safeties, definitely had some flashes over here today. But overall, I think when you look for the improvement of a team from week 1 to week 2, I think that it goes double to the young players. So some of the players that are still wet behind the ears, so to speak, that struggled today on Thursday night, I think you'll see a better performance on Friday night. And quite frankly, you really have to see that, because it was not an impressive performance by Arizona State on either side of the ball. But again, you got to be careful about that week 1 overreaction. Yes, there's stuff to clean up, but I think Arizona State definitely has the capabilities of doing so. but the proof is going to be in the pudding Friday next week against Sacramento State.
Of course, Hode. Well, thank you so much for your insight. The Sun Devils getting the victory here tonight over Kent State 30-7. Keep it locked on DevilsDigest.com for all our content, and stay tuned throughout the rest of the 2019 season. Again, I'm Ethan Schmidt. Thanks for watching.